Well, hello again. Welcome back to the Alan Hudson Podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. Before we introduce our guest today, please remember to like, follow and subscribe to the podcast. And incidentally, if you've got any questions for Alan, just leave them in the comments below the show and we'll get Alan to answer them in the next podcast. So on to today. Two brilliant players from the Fulham side of the early 80s. It's Tony Gale and it's Robert Wilson. Rob, Tone, thanks very much for joining us today.
Our pleasure, boys.
Pleasure, yeah. Nice to meet you and nice to see Alan.
Excellent. Well, Alan, I'm sure you've got a few words of wisdom to put across to the boys before we get going.
Well, all it does is it brings back memories for me of being a Fulham supporter when I was a kid, with the great Johnny Haynes. And you two lads have done something that I always wanted to do, and that was play for Fulham. And I went there 14 years of age, and they said I was too small. The old adage, Alan Ball was too small as well. But and then watched Johnny Haynes at the end of his career, but you boys played for them. So I've got plenty of pictures on my wall, but I'd love to have had one with a Fulham shirt on. So welcome to the show, and especially Tony's got the great memory of Ray, going to Blackburn, and he never mentions. I don't know why he never mentions going and winning the Premier League with them, because I'm sure I would. It was quite something, and to be pulled into that team with Shearer and them, it was quite something.
He does mention it, Alan. I'm telling you, I'm sure that.
Well, we can't. I hear people talk about things all the time, and I thought, what are you on about? But something like that is, it was a time when Kenny Dalglish kind of got a few lads together with Ray and played the game as it should be played, playing to your strengths.
Well, let's just be clear, in case anyone isn't aware who you're referring to. We're talking about Ray Harford, of course, who was number 2 to Kenny at Blackburn.
Yeah, I mean, for Kenny to bring Ray all the way up to Blackburn tells you volumes, speaks volumes of the man. And he contacted me one day right out of the blue, and he asked me if I wanted to go to a match at Millwall. And I said, why would I want to go there? So he said, well, Mark McGee wants to meet you. He's a big fan. So he took me and a lad called Mike Bloomfield, who was a big Millwall. I said, only if my friend Mike could come. And we went there and we had a night at Millwall. Didn't watch the game, by the way. We was in the bar, but it was we met Mark McGee. So but great. He was an absolute gentleman of the game, and what I liked about him on the way to Millwall and back, he never spoke about. These coaches are coaching mad, aren't they? He never spoke about coaching or nothing like that. Just life in general, which was a breath of fresh air. So we'll give today for those that don't even recognise that he was a big part. Bringing Tony with when you got a crisis was, a lot to be said for Tony, but for that man to do it, I mean, what would Kenny have done? So yeah, great. But as for advice, I can't tell you a Premier League player, winner, what to do, can I?
You can.
I suppose you do, Rob, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we both worked with him for many, many years. He was a coach way ahead of his. He was the first coach back in them early 80s that introduced what me and Tony probably would recognise as like a diamond system and third man running. He was so far ahead of his ilk, you know what I mean? And coaches, yeah. And it was no surprise that Kenny Dalglish called on his services many years later. And as we all know, he did try number one many, many times, and he was never really comfortable as a number one. I think he was more comfortable as a coach, first team coach, assistant manager, call it what you want. I think because he didn't really like the limelight, in terms of in that little bit of media that we had about in them days, Do you agree with that, Tony?
Yeah, totally agree. Ray, on the organisational side of football, was incredible. I mean, you can't really coach players going forward as such. Someone like Alan or someone like yourself or even myself as a footballing defender, we know how to play football. Excuse me. But as far as defending goes and having an organisation and a structure to a team, which was starting to come in those days for Blackburn, he was brilliant. I remember the training sessions up there and at Fulham as well. It was based on the same kind of structures. And even if you fast forward it all those years, Rob Bell, it was all based on that back four and the two in front of us. And then the rest would play, so to speak. And we had two great wide players up there. And, of course, we had two great strikers in Shearer and Sutton, the old SAS, as you'll recall them as. But Ray was brilliant. And training sessions were all week. It was based on that structure. And I learned a lot of him later in my life, as well as early with Rob, because he then offered me a coaching job up there. And it's probably one of the regrets of my life that I actually came back to London, came back to London rather than start in Blackburn and start off a coaching life. So it may have been what might have been for me, but I ain't had a bad one anyway in the media.
So what you're saying is, Tony, had he offered you a job down in London, you would have maybe gone into coaching and maybe got furthered that career.
Yeah, Blackburn's a long way out, as we all know. Yeah. Cool, blimey.
I played up there for Stoke, and it's even a long way from Stoke, let alone London.
It's Stoke and again, isn't it? It's one of them. Like it's another Stoke. Yeah. But you'll know, like it's not just about you when you go away from home. Rob settled down well in Huddersfield, actually. But it's about the family as well. And at the time, I had a young family. They were schooling in Weybridge in Surrey. And, it was difficult, more for my wife than that. But I really should have stayed up there. I do regret it.
Yeah. But Rob touched on a point as well that, he couldn't handle management. And I'm not really a coach man as regards played under a lot of coaches or whatever. I don't believe in coaching, to tell you the truth. But I had Don Howe for a year at Arsenal, and he was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because he kept everything simple. And as you just said, he went into management and couldn't handle management. And I truly believe that Dave Sexton at Chelsea in the 60s and 70s, when he first came, he's just ashamed that Doherty never stayed there and had Dave as a coach. We would all have got on a lot better with him if he'd have remained a coach rather than turn the other side of the business, which was sorting business out, which he couldn't handle. He couldn't handle the management side of it. Management side of it is so much more difficult, and you're dealing with people's lives, and he couldn't do that. And I probably Don couldn't do that as well, getting involved. But as a coach and a man, fantastic.
Yeah, I think he also had the task of when he took over at Blackburn, he of course took over from Kenny, who'd had enough of it at the time. He'd gotten promoted, took him to second place in his first season, and then won it the third season up in the Premier League. And it takes a lot of a toll on you, doesn't it? And took the toll on Kenny. Ray took over, and instead of being good cop, he had to then become bad cop. And all the good cops were under him, and I don't think it quite worked out the way that he wanted to. But I wouldn't like to remember him like that. I'd like to remember him as you said earlier, Al, as a great man and a great coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And he needs mentioning because a lot of these people that, especially in the early days with the big money and the best players and all that, the Premier League was one. It was a little bit like Leicester winning it, wasn't it? When Leicester won, it was a breath of fresh air. I just wish we could share it about a little bit more and let these kind of people be heard or known more often. But he was a very quiet man, wasn't he? He was just in the background, man. And
Robert, tell you, he had the same predicament at Fulham as well, because he took over. He came in as a coach, and then under Malcolm McDonald, and then when Malcolm left, you can take it up from there, Rob. He took over from Malcolm, so it was the same kind of predicament for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think at the Fulham in his first few years when we were still there, a lot of the players stayed there till sort of 85, and after that season where we lost out at Derby away, sort of Ray took over. But yeah, I just think, and if you look at his track history of where he's had jobs at Wimbledon, a number of other clubs. I think where he, like you say, he was the number one, and he just didn't like that side of it, dealing with players every day of the week and media and chairmans and directors. He loved the coaching on the pitch, and as Tony alluded to, that was his forte. He wasn't quiet, but he was quite a he was a comical guy off the pitch as well. And Gale and Strongy, that they'd take the mickey out of him as a coach. You probably wouldn't get away with it nowadays, what we used to get up to. But he was such a lovely man. And I say I had a pleasure working with him at Luton for 2 years. I'm still in contact with his son, Paul Harford, and his grandson. They're Fulham season ticket holders, and Paul's a taxi driver, and he picks my mum up quite regular and takes her to my sister's over in Morden. I've been out with Paul loads of times, and I always tell him to his face, and I've written it in the programmes when I do my notes. He is the best coach I've ever worked with. And I worked with George Graham, who was good at Millwall in '85, but then went to Arsenal. But overall, Ray was I think he was such a forward-thinking coach, and he was ahead of his time.
It's very interesting, because I read when I was over in Egypt last year with Shanksy, and he had a book on the side of Gordon Jago, and I read the book, and I was, God, it blew me away. I thought, I've got to meet this fella. He's probably along the same lines, what he did in America. He took over in America as well. He was fantastic. And sadly, he passed away, didn't he? And I wanted to meet him, but the same with people like that. That they don't get, they only hear of the people that win things and got their face on the TV all the time.
It was funny with Ray, because Rob will tell you he was really funny. So he wanted to be one of the lads. He came from London. He worked at the markets, didn't he? He worked at the fruit and veg market. So he came from that background, and he kind of would have known all the people that we know, because my dad was a cab driver. Rob's driver was on the train. So all the guys that we know, Ray knew. So he had the same sense of humour, and he had a great character. But when football changed, and it was always about football interviews for the managers afterwards, and some are good football interviewers, but they're not very good managers, are they? But Ray was useless. As soon as they put the mic under him, he'd freeze. He'd actually freeze. And I used to say to him, "Do you want me to do that for you?" I said, "You're useless. You're useless at that." But he could get up and do a stand-up act with us. He'd do a song, wouldn't he, Rob? He could sing a song and all that. But as soon as he went into the managerial stakes and the microphone went under him, he became all guarded, and he became sort of introverted, where he was an extrovert kind of bloke. It was a strange one for him, but a lovely man.
Yeah, terrific.
He had a very dry sense of humour, and like he worked with some. I mean, he was the one that brought the likes of Paul Parker through, and the young team that we had in them sort of '80s. After a few had disappeared, he'd worked with Terry Mancini, and the youth players had come up, and he gave youngsters a chance at Fulham because he had to, because some of the experienced players started to leave, as we all did by the time we'd got to 1985, when we missed out getting to the first division in the derby game of '83. But yeah, a fantastic bloke, dry sense of humour, and like Tony says, was always wanting to be in on the butt of the jokes if Gale or Strongy were doing something to Malcolm, or or something like that. But like you say, he was the good cop then, and he'd get the youngsters and the more experienced players on his side, and that's why we had limited amount of success in them sort of 2 or 3 seasons.
Can we delve a bit into that promotion, the team that nearly got promotion in '82, '83, and you just referenced it, Rob?
Yeah,
that infamous derby game. Tell the people who out there who may not know the details about that derby game.
Well, obviously the season before we'd gone up on the last game of the season against Lincoln, which was at the Cottage in May. 27,000 now. I don't know how they squeezed them all in. I think it was meant to be only 20,000. And we drew 1-1 on the night. Roger Brown scored, God rest his soul, scored a great header from a free kick. We ended up getting promotion to what it was, the second division there, which we'd come out third. And then we had a really great run in that season. And with 6 games to go, we played Leicester at home. I think it was round about late March, early April, and they were chasing us. We were sitting in second or third, and we had to. So if we'd have beat them that day or got a draw, I think we probably would have gone on and got to the first division. They beat us 1-0. Ian Wilson scored. I'm sure it came off Gale's backside. He always says it didn't. And then we went on then, and we went on to lose the next 3 or 4 games out of the last 6. So we took us to the Derby game, which was the last game of the season, away at the old baseball ground. And you got Archie Gemmell, Hector, Bobby, who was up front. Bobby, what was he called, Tony? The centre forward who scored the goal, Bobby Davison.
Yeah, Bobby.
Yeah. And it in them days the fences were still up. So we started the game. Obviously, we went in there. We had to win. We had to make sure we win to have a chance of getting promoted. And the pitch was absolutely shocking. And as you know, we had a really good footballing side and a passing side in them days. So it sort of did affect us a bit. The crowd were very intimidating. We took, our normal 4,000 or 5,000 up there. It was mum and dad come. I think I had a minibus with all my brothers and my mum and dad. We all went for the day out thinking it was going to be a joyful day. We'd get promoted. We'd had a after party booked at night at Kingston somewhere. And yeah, it went pear-shaped. They went 1-0 up from a corner. And then, we'd had a few half chances. Gordon Davis and Dean Coney had a few half chances. And then about 15 minutes to go, the police and stewards had opened all the gates round the 3 sides of or 2.5 sides of the ground. And the fans, and it was tradition for them the last game of the season, they would always do that. They started encroaching onto the pitch. And if you ever see the footage on YouTube or wherever you watch it, it is unbelievably intimidating. There were 15 yards. If the ball was up the opposite end, they were actually 15 yards onto the pitch when the camera spun round. Brian Moore was commentating. Malcolm and Ray, as we alluded to there, Malcolm was standing on the side. He just couldn't believe it. Malcolm was trying to talk to the inspector, the police, who was saying, well, we can't play in these, conditions. And the referee was his last game of the season. He was retiring. I was actually running about 5-8 minutes ago. I was running up in the left-hand corner with the ball, and I did a little bit of a Cruyff turn. Gale will laugh at that, but the guy came out the crowd
in installments. Yeah.
The guy came out the crowd, kicked me up the arse, and went back into the crowd with just by the byline. I stops and points. Ray Lou runs over to stop me going towards him. The referee came over, and he just pointed him. And then he did a drop ball. It was absolutely horrendous. And then, the famous thing, the game was not fully played because we went to court afterwards. About 90 seconds ago, the referee blew the whistle. I think it was for a free kick or a goal kick. And the whole 25,000 just ran on the pitch. And we were scrambling to get to the tunnel and getting assaulted. Jeff Hopkins got assaulted. We all got some kind of kicks or battering. Got in the changing rooms, couldn't believe it. Referee comes in after speaking to the inspector, police, and said, I can't get 20,000 off the pitch. That's it. Ernie Clay was chairman. I went to the court case with the FA on the Tuesday, straight after the game, because the season had finished. We were trying to claim for a replay. We went to that. I went to the court case, the FA case, and they just threw it out. They didn't want it because they knew then if they gave us an opportunity to replay the game, we might have won the game and then got promoted to the first division. So yeah, it was a very sad day for everyone connected with Fulham, because I purely believe that if we had got promoted, I think the youngsters and experienced players we had in Tony and Lockie and Brownie and Strongy, if he played now and again, would have gone on and done quite well in that first division. We had Ray Houghton, who was a young West Ham free transfer, Sean O'Driscoll, me and Ray Lou in the middle of the park. So we would have gone on and probably done something, in that, because Ray would have been coaching us in that first division. So it was a shame, and one that a lot of older supporters who were there, often talk to me about it on the concourses of the games when I go and watch them.
Well, that would never happen today, would it? They'd make sure they replayed the game and you played the full 90 minutes, wouldn't they? Or played it to the duration of the game that should have been.
The referee admitted at the hearing that he'd never finished the game. There was still 90 seconds to go. All right, we might not have been able to score 2 goals in 90 seconds, but our argument was that we probably could have done. You know what I mean? So it was a sad day in Fulham's history, and lots of good times they've had in the last sort of X amount of years. But yeah, that was a sad day that goes down in the
What
books.
do you recall of that day, Gailey?
Yeah, my bottle completely went. I was first off the pitch. I never moved so quick. No, it was quite intimidating actually. And Robert forgot to mention one of the Derby players, Kenny Burns, was playing for them.
Yeah.
And he was kicking lumps out of people, honestly, in a time where you probably could. We had a young team. I think I was 20. I think I was 23 because I left when I was 24 to go to West Ham. So I was one of the older ones actually, and Rob said I was the experienced one.
Well, you were in the first team at 16.
Yeah, I was in the first team at 16, young. So I'd already had about 250 games, but it was still one of those intimidating places to go, the baseball ground. I mean, Al will tell you from his old days when he probably played against some really great Derby County teams like Charlie George was playing and Archie Gemmell and people like that. But this was managed by Peter Taylor. And really, I think looking back on it, we got a bit bullied. Some of the young players got a little bit bullied. Not the fact that Robert got kicked going down the line, but bullied by a Derby team that needed to win to stay up. Yeah. They needed to win to stay up. We needed a win to go up. And they done it by hook or by crook. And as you go a little bit more experience, and I think all the boys will tell you, sometimes you can't play football. It's just games where you can't play football and you've got to get a result, particularly on a mud, sandy, crappy pitch at the baseball ground, surrounded by barbed wire. It was like Stalag 13, wasn't it? It was like in the old prisoner of wars all around it. But it was intimidating, but I'd never give up the memory for all my time. I think it was a great memory. And we all done a lot of learning that day. But unfortunately, Rob was talking about the sorry about my throat today, boys, but Rob was talking about the pitch, but we also had a bad pitch ourselves, which probably cost us promotion because rugby was going on the same time at Fulham, wasn't it, Rob? And like they was on our pitch because the football we played at the start of the season, everybody, and I'm sure Alan will even remember, we won 2 goals of the season on match of the day with the football that we played. So I think the pitch at Craven Cottage cost us more points than a pitch actually on that day because it slowed us down a bit.
I mean, that might have changed the course of your career, mightn't it, Gailey? If Fulham had gone up, you may not have led to you moving to West Ham a couple of years later.
Yeah, there was also a lot of promises down there, Tone, as well. We had a chairman called Ernie Clay, who I think, in hindsight, when I look back at it, probably didn't want to go up for some reason because he was trying to sell the club and he was trying to sell the real estate of a Craven Cottage. So I had that half the feeling that although all the crowd and we wanted to go up, I'm not sure the chairman did because he'd have got a better deal with being in a lower division, but he didn't manage to sell it anyway. But I only stayed another season just to see how it would go. And I was the first one out the door after the next season because all the young players followed me then, Ray Houghton, Paul Parker, Robert, all the other ones, but I was the first one out the door when I knew that the club had no prospects of going up. But it was a shame because the Fulham team that I played in was, on a par with the West Ham team that I first went to. Although the second season at West Ham, we nearly won the league, but the first season, the Fulham team was nearly as good as that, I would say, not a way off it.
Do you remember that Fulham team, Al?
I think I might have been in Seattle then. So it weren't close to me. I kind of lost touch. But I was going to say to Rob, where did you go from Fulham, Rob?
I went to Millwall. George Graham signed me. They just got promoted.
That was a Millwall move, yeah.
Yeah, that was 85. Let's say Tony had gone in 84. Then me, Ray Houghton, Ray Lewington, we all left in the same summer of 85. Ray went to Oxford, I went to Millwall, and Ray Lou went to Sheffield United. But yeah, that was George Graham. They just got promoted from the 3rd division to the 2nd division, as it was there. And then, yeah, that was probably the worst year of my career. I hated every minute of it.
Really?
Yeah. It was. as we well know, Millwall's a tough place. But I mean, I scored 12 goals in 36 games. I signed a 3-year contract, and then at the end of that first season I was there, we finished, I think, about 7th. George went to Arsenal with Theo Foley, and then sort of new guy came in called John Docherty, little Scotch guy, was from Brentford.
Yeah, yeah.
And he took an instant dislike to me. I don't know for what reason, because I was probably one of the top paid players. So I knew after pre-season he didn't want me, and I still had another 2 years left. So, in fact, and then this talking about Ray found out that I was not, that I wasn't enjoying it, and he was at Luton, so he rang me and he said, "Listen," he said, "Do you want out?" And I said, "Yeah." So yeah, about a week later, I met Ray in a hotel. Didn't even meet. The manager was John Moore, who was the youth team coach. David Pleat had gone to Tottenham. John Moore had stepped up to become first team manager and got Ray in as coach. And, working with Steve Foster, Mal Donaghy, the Steens, Ricky Eel, Peter Nicholas, first division on the old Astra. It was an amazing, and I was still fairly young then. It was an experience, but yeah. So I always give Ray, plaudits for getting me out of Millwall and taking me to Luton for 2 years.
But going back, how did you go on with George? What was
George was good. Yeah, George was great. No problem. In fact, one of his little snippets before he left, and he did say to me, "Oh, Rob, give me time. Once I get my feet under the door, I'll see if I can come in for you." Because I got on really well with George. So yeah, it never did happen. I think he signed Steve, a midfield player from Southampton. Steve, what were he called, Gale?
Williams.
Steve Williams.
Steve Williams. Yeah, he signed him about 2 or 3 months later. So yeah, I knew I weren't going to go there, but yeah. So I ended up sort of staying 2 years at Fulham, and then at Luton, and then Ray Lewington got player manager at Fulham, and that's when I went back the second time in 87. He rang me and he said, "Oh, I'm getting the band back together." I said, "I'm getting Ivor, I'm getting you." He said, "I'll be player manager." He said, "Would you come back?" So, and it's true what they say. It's never the same second time round. We were in the 3rd division then. They'd gone down in them 2 years previously, so I'd left. And yeah, as much as I liked going back to my boyhood club, it was very difficult circumstances with limited amount of money. And Ray was working under a tight budget, and Jimmy Hill was chairman, and it were tough times.
It would it been around that time you had that unfortunate incident at home, Willow?
No, that was the 7th of December 1982. So that was while I was still the first time when Tony was playing. I had a carbon monoxide poisoning in my house, and I was on a life support machine for 7 days in Royal Berkshire in Reading. Yeah, it took me. I came back and played that season in the sort of May. It took 5 months out of my career. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was minutes from death. Put it that way, and my ex-wife as well.
Amazing, mate.
Yeah, it made the front page of some of the papers and inside pages as well. Yeah, it was quite a big
You only
thing.
did it for a bit of publicity, didn't you? Because you was looking for a move. Yeah.
Yeah. I ended up suing the house builder Wimpy settled out of court 6 years later. Obviously, we claimed for affecting my career and 6 months and all that. So it was tough, but it was.
He didn't get any money off them, boys. He just got free Wimpies for the next 4 years.
I never paid any more gas bills.
Listen to your story about Fulham. It kind of runs alongside Chelsea in many ways. What happened to you and where Fulham are now? What happened to Chelsea? They went down and everything else, and we were in for about 10 years in turmoil. Fulham were. And now they're back. And the other night, obviously, they beat Chelsea. They've been they're kind of looking like a Premier League club now, aren't they? Tone goes to a lot of their games. Tony, don't you?
Yeah, I do a lot of Fulham. Do a lot of Rob goes to Fulham as a fan, but I do it more. I'm still doing the commentaries now, so still working.
Are you more Fulham or West Ham man, Tone?
Well, it's where you start, Al, isn't it? So
yeah.
I think like where you started your career, Chelsea, mine was Fulham, so, but I can't say that over in the West Ham area because I'll probably get done in. So when I'm with West Ham fans, it's West Ham. When I'm with Fulham fans, it's Fulham.
No,
But, you
you're
know, when you
Chelsea, really, Gailey. Come on, be
well,
fair.
I started. We were talking about that before, Tone, wasn't we? Like Uddy was our hero because he come from the prefabs round Chelsea, and there was like me, Perry Digweed, who Alan knows, Tommy Mason. Do you remember him, Al? Tommy Mason.
Love Tommy Mason. Love the
Yeah.
Masons.
So,
Yeah.
and our coach was a guy called Teddy Weston down at Chelsea Boys Club. So we all grew up around there, and obviously we wanted to be Chelsea players. We wanted to follow Alan, who was a little bit older than us. So. I used to go. I talk about my first Chelsea teams was Bobby Tamblyn, Georgie Graham, Terry Venables, Ken Shiletto, and I had a season ticket over there with my dad. Then after that, it was Alan's great side, but it was brilliant to watch. Like Uddy, Charlie Cook. What about Charlie Cook? Oh, Peter Osgood, like Peter Houseman. I used to go over there, bunk off school, and watch them training. Al, do you remember when they trained in the forecourt? You had a five-a-side. Eh? Used to have a
Yeah.
five-a-side on the concrete forecourt, and like you got. Can you imagine Premier League players now, like fucking falling down a drain or something like that in the forecourt and dodging around bars and had a bit of board at the end of each end out. It was the goal, wasn't it? Like,
Yeah.
and all us kids used to, you know, I used to go down there with a guy called Billy Digweed. He used to, yeah, say, come down, you know, bunk off of school. They're down here this Friday. You know, I used to go down there and watch, and that was my childhood. And I nearly signed for Chelsea because when my contract was up at Fulham, it was Chelsea and Fulham who was both trying to sign me. But my love for Chelsea had gone then because obviously I was a Fulham player, and Fulham becomes your love of your life, doesn't it? And then, but I could have signed for either one of them, and I decided to sign for West Ham. And I still think I made the right decision because Chelsea wasn't that good then. Al, I didn't think. It was John Neal was the manager. Remember John Neal?
Yeah,
John Neal.
yeah. You wouldn't have. I don't think you'd have fitted in with John Neal because he liked to. He liked to hit the front man every time. Tone, you know,
Yeah.
he wouldn't. It wouldn't be. I wouldn't have think he wanted you in the team anyway because Colin Pates was a great player as well, but he didn't want. I said to Colin one day, "Why don't you play your normal game on a Saturday? You know, you're brilliant all week in training." He said, "Well, he won't let me. He wants me to just get it up to Dixon and Speedy, you know." And that's why they wanted to. So you wouldn't have been happy there. I think you
Yeah.
made the right move, you know.
Yeah, I was lucky, Al. I mean, I suspect you guys will remember John Lyle because he always wanted us to play out the back, you know. And we had lovely midfield players like Alan
Yeah.
Devonshire, Alan Dickens at West Ham. So we had some players that we could play short passes into ourselves,
Yeah.
a bit like at Fulham, and I like to come out the back, so it allowed me to come out the back. I don't think they do that now. Centre backs just sit there passing it sideways for about 10 minutes, don't they? But I like to come out the back and even go beyond the midfield players who would fill in for me. But that wasn't the Chelsea way at the time, but it was more the West Ham way.
Yeah.
Am I
But
right in thinking, Gailey, that you started off as a midfield player rather than a centre half?
No, I was a centre back, Tone. I started off at school where you always start at right back because they ain't sure of you about you, are they? But when they realise that you're a decent player, I went to the centre back positions. And then when I first got in the team, and he'll remember all the boys like Bobby Moore, Georgie Best, Rodney Marsh, and I'm hanging about there 16 years of age, a lot of experienced professionals who Alan more than Rob will know, Peter Marinello, Ray Evans, Chris Guthrie, Peter Kitchen, like, you know, learning my trade, if you like. It was brilliant. It was brilliant at Fulham for me. It was like, and in the team at 16, and I was captain at 18. Yeah, I was captain at 18. So it was a great football. It still is a great football club. I hope they never take that Fulham thing away from them. Do you know what I mean? I hope that never leaves. But football's a changing game now. When you go to all the grounds, you see all the old players like us. We all reminisce and talk about the game. But they say football's faster now, but I think it's a load of cobblers. It ain't faster. There's like 20 passes before. If you had a kick off now in the old days, Alan and Robert tell you kick off, you had to play the ball forward, didn't you? Because you was immediately under pressure. They kick off now, first half and second half of games. They'll have 20 passes before someone engages the opposition. And it's all, they all call it strategy and tactics. And it's all based on how to stop a team rather than how to influence the game yourself. And we were lucky to play in a time when the coaches would go, right, how are we going to hurt the opposition? Even when you were playing Liverpool and Everton's top teams at the time, like, how are we going to hurt them rather than how are we going to defend against them? And that I think is the big change in the football culture down the years, stopping teams rather than hurting teams.
Yeah, the funny thing about that, Tony, is if you've got great centre forwards like we did in them days, you had Shearer play with him for a little while. Osgood at Chelsea, he would not have allowed that to happen. He would have been screaming at defenders to get it into him. If not get it into him, get it in the midfield, who then got it into him. Every time I got the ball, my first ball was Osgood. If he weren't on, look elsewhere. But he wouldn't have allowed. There would have been murders at Chelsea if they'd have started passing the ball back like they do today. They wouldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened because, number one, they couldn't do it. They didn't have the technical ability, of like yourself, Tone, who was a footballer. They weren't footballers, the David Webbs and Ronnie Harris of this world were, hit them and then get it to the nearest player if they could, or lump it upfield to where Oz and Hutch would always be on the end of it. But that wouldn't have happened today, It wouldn't have happened back then, and it couldn't have happened back then, obviously, we all know that it's bringing all the foreign coaches in. And Pep really hasn't been great for the game. I'm not a great lover of what he's brought into the game, and introducing goalkeepers to play is not really my thing. I don't really get that one.
Well, as long as they can play, it's all right. I mean, Edison was a great signing, wasn't he? I mean, that as a goalkeeper, he obviously can't move like an outfield player, but he did have the ability, boys, to maybe play short and play in between the lines. Rather than going to centre backs, Edison could play in between the lines, and then when everybody got sucked in, bang, he would hit it up to the centre forward's feet. And that's the way we was all taught, wasn't it? Let's look forward first and foremost. That not sideways. And if I got the ball at the back, my first thought wasn't give it to the fullback who's going to give it back to me or whatever. It was look into Robert or Alan and if midfield players couldn't handle the ball with their back to play, I don't think they were midfield players. And like I played with players later in my career, and all I could see was the back of their shirts rather than the front of them when they're facing up. And I go, well, that's cowardly. You don't want the ball. You're looking like you want the ball, but you don't really want it. And that wasn't how I was taught. And we go back to even boys' club days. I mean, there was a guy called Teddy Weston who should have been a football coach, I believe. Should have been a football coach, but, only coached at the boys' club levels, because that's where you get all your good habits when you're growing up as a kid. You're growing up at 10, 12, 14. That's why lucky I was in the side at 16 because of someone like Teddy Weston, because they were beyond their years. He wasn't a great player himself, but he could see the game of football. And I think seeing the game of football.
I used to watch him every week when he played with my old man. So, yeah, but he loved his football, didn't he? Teddy lived and breathed football. But exactly what you're talking about. I'll tell you what's interesting now is what we got to look forward to. And if it does happen, the new Chelsea manager, I don't know if you lads watched the Strasbourg play Crystal Palace in the Champions League.
Conference League,
yeah. Yeah. Well, the new manager, who I really like, I think he's going to be a great manager. I think they've hit the jackpot if he does it his way, which he says he's going to do. But he had a goalkeeper came out, and the goalkeeper was playing 30 yards, like 20 yards outside the box with the back four. He was actually joined in play, and there was nobody. I mean, if you could get a replay of this match and they gave it away a couple of times, and they had a gaping open goal, and they just a couple of them chipped it in, one hit the bar, one hit the post, and it was just, what I'm trying to say is, if he'll be brave enough to do that in the Bridge, I don't know. But he said he's going to do it his way, and that is his way of playing. So it will be interesting to know. That little thing alone will be playing on my mind when I watch Chelsea play.
Well, I don't think they've got the goalkeeper at the moment to warrant him doing that.
Rob, I don't really think that comes into it. I think, we all know goalkeepers. We've seen them play in training. They want to play in five-a-sides. They all think they can play, don't they? They do. They really do. It's Peter Shilton. I mean, we had him. He played in five-a-sides, and it was embarrassing, But but you imagine bringing people like that into your back four and passing it. But that is what they've been told to do, and that's the way he wanted them to play. I didn't really get to the. I still can't understand about what he thought that would bring to the team, but because it only brought mayhem when they lost the ball, it was crazy. But it'd be interesting to see if he brings it into Chelsea, because they've had enough heart attacks in the crowd, haven't they, this year?
Well, we actually know and played with Liam Rosenior's dad, Leroy. So
Right.
He was a teammate of ours. So I've known Liam since he was a kid and followed his footballing career and obviously his coaching and now managerial career. And I really hope he does something, because it's about time they give a job to an Englishman, and he's got it. He doesn't lack in confidence. I've got to give him that. I've seen his first couple of press conferences and I can't wait to see him and give him a bit of stick like I used to give to his dad. But his family, the whole family, lovely people. Robert testified to that. Leroy's a lovely bloke. He does some good stuff on the TV at PLP as well. But Liam's he was a okay player, but there's a lot of okay players that have made good managers anyway, haven't they? So if you're going to give the job to someone like Maresca, why shouldn't you give it to someone like Liam Rosenior? Why shouldn't he be given a chance? But I don't think the coaching is going to be a problem for him. I think it's how the players respect him. Do they think he's a big enough name? Because you know what players are like. As soon as a manager walks in the dressing room, they'll be all over you, won't they? Trying to take a liberty or whatever. But good luck to Liam. I hope he does really well.
Willow, how much do you know about Liam?
I'm not. Well, I'm not. I don't know him as well as Tony done, but I've seen his career in terms of coaching and managing at Derby and Hull, and you look at his record. He was, how he wanted to play was the right way. Obviously, Strasbourg, invested in him probably 18 months ago, and with the family tie of the Chelsea owners and the Strasbourg, and that was probably always a long-term view. If he did well at Strasbourg, they would look to integrate him at some point. I think he's come a lot earlier than he probably would have liked, but I'm sure he'll capitalise on it now. But yeah, I mean, as Tony said, I think his first two interviews went round the first interview and shook every one of the media's hand, trying to get them on side, because they're the ones that will either make him or break him. And sometimes it'll be great on the coaching side, but again, as Tony alluded to, some of these superstars at Chelsea will be looking and thinking, who's this young guy come in? He's telling me I've got to do this, I've got to do that. That's good. He's going to have to win over. And, you haven't just got 25 pros at Chelsea. You've probably got 125, You've probably got 50 out on loan that you've got your backroom team. And they're going to be the ones that will, keep him intact. And I think he's brought a few English guys and foreign guys from Strasbourg. So, sorry about that.
We can't hear that anyway, don't worry.
All right, okay. So as Tony says, I wish him well, because he sounds a really nice kid. I think he's got a great aura about him. And looking at some of his coaching that he's done previously, I just wish him the well, because as we all know, Chelsea needs to be a challenging for that top spot, second spot, even though I reluctantly have to say that. But yeah, they've been by the wayside for the last sort of 10 years.
Looking back at your careers, who would you pinpoint as the best managers you played under?
The best coach I've ever worked with is Ray Hartford, and I'll say that all day long. The best manager? Hard, really. George was very good, but I only had 1 year out of him. You know what I mean? And Malcolm McDonald was not. He wasn't. He was just a figurehead. Took the job. He was working in the marketing department when he got the job. When Bobby Camboy, I always respect Bobby because he gave me my debut at 18, and he dipped me in and out for sort of 18 months before eventually he was working under tight restraints with the chairman of Ernie Clay, and we were lower part of Division 2 or 3 at some stage, and eventually. Obviously, he did get the sack, and Malcolm took over by default, really, because I think he was just working for the club as a marketing guy. But he brought in experienced or young coaches in George, or an experienced coach in George Armstrong, and then he brought Ray in eventually. But yeah, Malcolm I wouldn't say he was a good manager. He was just a figurehead that I liked playing for, but it was more the coaching side rather than the title of him being the manager, where we had that success for a couple of years. But all my clubs, and then when I came back the second time, I love working with Ray Lou, who was a really good friend of mine for the second 2 years when he was player manager. We still meet up. Tony will tell you, 25 of us met up at Christmas in World's End. We meet up a couple of times a year. We've still got a WhatsApp group with over 40 ex-Fulham players on there that we speak daily.
Alan knows it, Rob. He knows Frantoio. We're going Frantoio.
Frantino. Yeah, we're
Boochies.
Boochies. Yeah, Perry Digweasel.
Yeah, we go there every December, and we have a right good crack, and it's just like being back in the changing rooms and the banter, and you know what I mean, older heads, and then there's a few younger ones that have joined in the last sort of couple of years. So, and I say to people, there's no way this current Fulham team will have a WhatsApp group in 40 years' time and still be in correspondence. Some of them won't even talk to each other daily, never mind 40 years' time. So, I mean, you look at Liverpool, I always see their Christmas get-together, and there were about 20 of them in an hotel and lunch in Liverpool December. It was a lovely photo. But teams don't, I don't know if you still keep in contact with lots of your ex-colleagues, Al, and meet up or whatever, but we've always had that family-orientated buzz about Fulham, and we still keep together.
It's always Alan and Shanksy, Rob. Alan and Shanksy.
These days it is, mate, yeah. We're the only two alive out of that lot. But,
yeah, it's as I say, it's great to have the the daily or the weekly or the 6 monthly when we all get together to reminisce and talk about it. But as I say, the current crop of players and the way the system is, I cannot see that happening. And once you leave a club and go somewhere else, you just lose that affinity. I think they're just there. It's such a business now rather than an enjoyment. When we were playing and you're representing your local home team club, then I think them days have gone.
Well, the strangest thing is that is the main reason I started this. Well, Tony and I started this podcast was to keep in touch with players and see what they're doing and how they are, and share a few stories with them. And it's kind of that kind of thing with me. That's and it's been great, been very sad on occasions because and so it's very funny you two coming on quite early, because half the time players can't use their whatever it is to get through to us. So we're always late on air because they have to get their grandchildren to come round and fix it for them and all that kind of stuff.
I did as well, Al. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's handy for me. I just press a button, but no, but that's the main reason of the podcast. And if we can get outsiders, we had a few oddballs on, Tony, haven't we? Along the way, mainly goalkeepers, but that's why you can't trust them coming out of the box with the ball.
Have you had Perry on at all? Because obviously he had Fulham and Brighton.
No.
Has he turned you down?
He turned me. Well, he wanted too much money.
Gailey,
Robert, when you was at Huddersfield, did you ever come across Frank Worthington at matches?
Yeah, I played.
It finished by then. I didn't go to Huddersfield till 89.
He
was living in Huddersfield. Yeah, we're living in a village near Huddersfield. I don't know how old he would have been then, but yeah, obviously a lifelong legend up there in Huddersfield where he started his career, and
I think he was
Bolton,
born
obviously.
Halifax, wasn't he? I think he was born in
Yeah,
Halifax.
he lived at Out Lane, which is between Huddersfield and Halifax.
Yeah.
Right on the M62 there, like up in the top. Yeah, he lived there.
He was the greatest for me, as regards on off the field and Elvis, everything else.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
No, I played against Frank. Yeah, I played against Frank when he was at Bolton. Yeah, and obviously coming to the later part of his career, wasn't he? But no, I agree with you. He done things on the pitch. He tried things, didn't he? He tried it. That like. Bit like Peter Osgood, really, like everybody, they tried things centre forwards around that time, didn't they? So, but when you're playing up against centre forwards, most of the time when I was playing, I think, well, I could do that. You know what I mean? But you could kind of read them quite easily. But the likes of Ozzy and Frank Worthington, who I'm an addict of the Big Match Revisited. I don't know if you boys watch it, but. You was actually on it the other day, Al, and it was your Stoke team with Jeff Salmons. I used to love Jeff Salmons. What a great player he was on the left-hand side, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And you were playing in there, and you had your orange Gola boots on that used to sponsor. Do you remember your orange Gola boots?
I do, yeah.
And I was just watching it, thinking, the game was great. The game was great, and it wasn't obscenities shouting on the touchlines. There was all innocent songs, weren't there? Although there was a lot of hooliganism going on. I was watching Chelsea the other day, and it was like AG, AGR, AGRO, Agro, all like songs like that. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. You know what I mean? It was like like going back in time. And I was watching it the other day, and there's like 7 series of it. I don't know if you watch it, boys. On the
I do. I watched I watched the Fulham game, Hereford, when Bestie and Marshy were playing, 1977, and they were messing about in the corner of the ball, just tackling each other. We beat them 5-1.
And I made my debut in 77, so it goes back about as far as 74, 75. So you want to go and have a look, Al? You're on quite a bit, and you had a couple of nightmares. I watched you in a couple of games. You was giving the ball away a bit in midfield. I thought, hold on. The touch ain't there. He must have been out the night before on that one.
All night I stayed in.
Yeah. Well, you should have gone out.
Yeah, I know. But no, I come across that because I had the race. It comes in on after the used to come on after the racing, didn't it? Yeah. So I'd see what games are on, and if I was on, I'd switch it off. So,
Gale, you mentioned being around as a kid in the George Best era at Fulham. I mean, tell us what that must have been. I mean, that must have been an absolute joy and a privilege to be around Bestie.
I didn't appreciate it then, I've got to tell you, because I was a cocky 16-year-old kid. But looking back on it now, you think that things like that, times in your life, are going to happen all the time like that. But it didn't. It happened for a couple of years. We was a travelling circus. That's what I called Fulham, travelling circus. We were apprentices, and I was apprentice to the 3 of them, Best, Marsh and Moore, and 3 different guys. Alan probably know him because his era a lot better than me, but they took us out, like 16, 17-year-olds used to get us half a lager, sit in the corner, don't move, just watch what's happening, have half a lager in the pub. Used to go out down the King's Road with them. We were invited to all the places. When we went abroad, like pre-season, because everybody wanted to see them, we were treated like one of them. They were just good people. Like, I don't think you get people like that now. They weren't like, oh, he can't be in our group because he's this, that, or the other. No, we were part of them. And like, when you're 16, 17, 18-year-old, it's just incredible to think how people would take you under their wing. I still speak to Rodney now. He pops over. He goes to lunch with me, Strongy, and Roy Hodgson. We go to Bootie's restaurant, Frantoio. Rodney pops over about twice a year. And he's still great, Marshy. He's still got it upstairs and everything. And the stories he comes out with, and the same with Alan as well. And because that was the era before us, I love the stories because down the years, I think football's got worse. I think the players before us were better than us. We were better than the players after us, and so on and so forth. And there's not those characters about now, but we have three of the greatest characters in world football, really. And that was all on our doorstep in Fulham. And we were training in Bishop's Park. Bishop's Park. You can't believe it, can you? Next to the club, if they were late for training, we used to, as Bestie was quite often, go with the 3 or 4 apprentices out into Bishop's Park, clearing all the dog shit off the pitch so we can have a nice little area to play, putting a few jumpers down for goalposts. Perry went in goal. The 3 of us other apprentices. The training was Bobby Campbell, bag of balls about 40 yards out from goal. He Bestie used to take one ball, try and beat the 3 of us, score a goal, run back to where the balls was, get another ball. And what a way to train. I was being twisted and turned and by one of the greatest players in world football, twisted and turned. And just like, if you can deal with that in training, as later on in my career, say, spin it on a long time, Sutton and Shearer, you're up against them every day in training. Come match day, quite easy, isn't it? When you're playing against players of lesser ability, the better players you're around, the easier it is. I can tell you, that's my one thing out of football. But those 3, and Rob had a bit of it as well, they were magnificent. Great people as well as players.
Well, I think George in particular was you wouldn't meet a nicer, more modest, and I think basically deep down, people think I'm crazy when I tell him he was shy.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
he was basically shy. It was, you know, he wouldn't be the life and soul of the party by any means. You know, he used to live down the road here, and although we've been really good friends for many years, we wouldn't even have each other's phone number. We'd just bump into each other and say, have a smile and go around the corner and have a couple of drinks together. It's just a lovely, lovely bloke. That's like one of the lads you wouldn't even know he's a footballer. Never talked about football,
No.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable fella.
Just a talent, wasn't he? And Moore was like footballing royalty, wasn't he? He was like, and quite often I'd grab a lift with him in the old yellow Jag. He used to have, Rob, I tell you, he had a yellow Jaguar, didn't he, Rob? And you got a yellow Jag and you're sitting in there with Moore, it's different class, isn't it? Like he's giving you a lift home to Pimlico, Drop us off in Looper Street, please, Bob. Yeah, unbelievable days. Unbelievable. Yeah. Going home, listening to Tom Jones cassettes in his yellow Jag on about 2 or 3 occasions. Oh, live with me for the rest of my life.
Willow, what's your favourite story from those guys, Bestie, Moore?
Well, I was apprentice in 77, which when I was 16, Gale probably would have been a pro by then because he's a couple of years older than me. But yeah, I cleaned Marshy's boots that first year when I was 16. But yeah, watching them 2, Moore had left by then. Watching them 2, that was their last real year, 77 to 78 when they had that season. Yeah, as Tony said, it was just like razzmatazz. Like, this London club called Fulham have attracted 3 of the biggest world superstars at the back end of their careers, but still was making Fulham in the headlines. You know what I mean? But yeah, Marshy would come out in the afternoon, as Tony says. I'd often be in the Bishop's Park, and he'd come and give his own time up and come and show us some skills and some drills. When we'd come back in the afternoon and do a little bit with the youth team manager at the time was a guy called Ian Salter. So yeah, it was a great time to be in and around them sort of 24/7, not just people still ask me now, did Bestie turn up late? Was there women getting out of cars and all that? I mean, it was such a quiet bloke, as we've just talked about, even at the back end of his career. And let's not forget, he sadly left the game far too early, you know what I mean? Even after us, and went to America, I think, and then he even played non-league and Scottish League. But yeah, I've seen the footage of Northampton. It came up on the telly a few months ago on that big match of it when he beats the sort of 7-8 players and that pitch in the cup. It's just mesmerising. And like you, Alan, watching you back in the day, so I've seen lots of Chelsea games and the England game. I mean, them skillful players in them days, as I said, I don't think are around now. Football's changed completely, and I don't think they're given the license to be off the cuff type midfield players, or I mean, they're too regimented, I think, in terms of what coaches demand out of players these days.
Yeah, Rob,
Uh,
can you
sorry,
remember?
Rob,
Can
I
you
think-
remember, boys? Marshy weren't a coach or anything, but he used to come and do the drills. So just a thing that's just come into my mind. Where you go in the turnstiles, Rob, at the away end, at the Putney end, there was a forecourt there, wasn't there?
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
had two big bins. Great, them big industrial bins.
big
You remember
green
that,
ones,
Tone,
like,
Alan? So
Yeah.
he used to roll balls off the corrugated turnstiles, and as the ball come down, you used to have to volley it, and it a dipping volley to try and get it in the big bin, and you got like 5 points if you or he give you a fiver if you've got it in the bin. But
He wouldn't.
That it was like the big industrial bins, and that's like coaching like that. It's like playground football. That's probably some of the best coaching ever. And then he's going, right, now you've done it with your right foot, you've got to do it with your left foot. Now you've got to have a touch, you've got to have a chest, hold it, head, chest, knee, volley, and you've got to do it like that. I honestly, those days, like when you're with senior professionals just doing things like that, incredible. Like, and you say to your mates when you go home, what you been doing? I've been practicing volleys with Rodney Marsh, trying to hit it in the bins on the forecourt, Unbelievable. And then the next day, you'll turn the telly on and it's a recorded game of Marshy when he played for England under Alf Ramsey, or someone like Alan, who we saw quite regular. When you had that game when Gunter Netzer, you give him the runaround, didn't it? Was it Gunter Netzer, Al?
Well, no, he didn't. He didn't play. He gave me the mention, but I'd like him to have played Town. It was, I think Overall played, and they had
Wolfgang.
Wolfgang, yeah. Yeah. It was a good night. It was, but it's one that, well, you wish that you look at these players that had. You played in the under-21s, Tone, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you never get in the England squad?
No, I don't think. Well, I might not have been good enough, but I thought I was good enough. But they weren't picking my type of player then. They were picking big centre halves, weren't they? Like you look at
the Terry Butchers,
Steve Foster, Terry Butcher, Terry Fennick. You remember Terry Fennick? Russell Osman. And sometimes you thought, well, maybe I am doing it wrong. I should be just kicking it down the channel and, win a few more headers now and again. Well, Rob used to have a go at me for not bringing them off.
No, I think, you're definitely wrong about that. That was a wrong way to play. International football is, as we know, is a lot different from club football, isn't it? You might get away with it in club football, but that's why we always fell short in international football with the back players.
Never played it out, did they?
They never played out. We had no one good enough. You just mentioned the players that weren't good enough to play out. They were
good. They were good players week in, week out, Al, weren't they? Very good top flight players,
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't. They got picked for what they'd done for their club. The people like Tony Adams, who was an incredible player for Arsenal. Absolutely incredible. But in the international scene, I don't think that's where we always fell short at the crunch end. And it was all because we lacked that little bit of class, and when it comes to passing the ball properly, but the natural ability comes through and all that. We we never had that at that level. And I was talking to someone the other day, strangely enough. I was saying if Graham Taylor had never got the England job, he'd probably be one of the most respected managers in the whole wide world. What he did at Watford and Villa was phenomenal. Watford in particular with Elton John was just incredible. I just read the book last year. What they became, these two were incredible. What they built at Watford was sensational. And Graham Taylor, had he not taken the England job, he would have been revered more than what he is. Bless him.
And he was a great man as well. Lovely man, wasn't he?
Great fella, yeah, great fella. He should not have taken the England job. I remember when he took the England job, bless him, and the headline was, "My father would be so proud." But little did he know, what was to come, because being a Watford manager is not. I know I've had a falling out with Dave Bassett one day on Sky TV. He said England should play the way your club play. And I said, are you trying to say they should play like Wimbledon, Dave? And he went on the defence. I went, I never got invited back on the show because he was mates with Richard Key. So all that comes into it. You got to watch what you say and who you say it to. So, But, I was surprised for yourself. There was very few players who could play like yourself, weren't they, at the back?
Yeah, I was always fortunate to play in teams that allowed me to play like that as well, with good players like Robert and Ray, who was very good at receiving the ball. And I went to West Ham, and I mentioned those players. I went to Blackburn, and Ray's first information to me when I went to Blackburn, I was obviously 34, 35 at the time, coming to the end, was, these boys are not composed on the ball. I played with a guy called Colin Hendry. Do you remember Colin Hendry, the Scottish boy?
Yeah, of course,
he had the heart of a lion. Could head the ball for England, or Scotland actually. Head the ball for Scotland. Great at set pieces. When he had the ball at his feet, he was a bag of nerves. And I just used to say, Colin, look, when you get the ball, just give it to me. Just give it to me. I said, when I want to head the ball, I'll leave it to you. You can do all the can do all the blocking and the heading and whatever you got to do. But what a great guy, and I was lucky to play with centre backs that allowed me to do what I did as well. I played with small centre backs, Paul Parker, Stevie Potts. I played with big centre backs, Colin Hendry, Roger Brown, Alvin Martin, and it all allowed. You got to complement each other. You can't always be a Robert Wilson in midfield or an Alan Hudson, can you? You've got to have someone to complement you, haven't you? Because if it had two of you, it sometimes throws it off. So it was always about kind of pairings and complementing each other. It's great
Willow,
stuff.
what was it like playing in front of Gailey?
It was nice. I mean, I worked alongside Ray Lou, so Ray was more the sitting player. He was probably more of a six in today's terms. And I was one that used to break forward, and Gailey would always find me with a pass, which no doubt he will tell you anyway. But we had
I did. I made you look good, didn't I, Rob?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So we had Gordon Davis and Coney, and we sort of like had set it up. And that was when Ray worked on me for that first season, just third man running and joining in. And I mean, I scored 12, 13 goals, a couple of seasons on the trot, just by breaking and joining in with him too. But 9 times out of 10, it would be Gailey or Kevin Locke on the left, who had a lovely left foot, was playing sort of left back if Strongy had cried off injured. And that was the way we played. And it was even in dodgy pitches that we had. But that was that was a nice thing, that we could complement each other with the way we played, and it was all down to Ray Harford and not Malcolm McDonald. I
think Rob, like you're underestimating yourself there, because as Alan would tell as well, like, if you're on the ball, I just used to say to someone, you're going to make a run, make a blinking run. I'll find you, as long as you make the run. I'll find you. And Robert was very good at timing his runs as the third man, as he said, like up to the striker, back, and he was in. Or I could go direct in on an angle or down the channel. And if not, if they started to mark Robert, then I would go and short to Ray Lewington and get out myself. But I think footballers know that it's not being telepathic or whatever you want to call it. It's just being a good footballer, isn't it? And like, Rob, you're making your run, I'll find you, don't worry. And then if I didn't find him, he could turn around and give me a rollicking and going, where's the pass? But I don't go, you didn't make the run, just make your run and I'll find you. And I think that's the way footballers played, wasn't it? Football, what I call footballers, not athletes, footballers.
Well, I think what you're saying, Tony, exactly what you said half hour ago, is where you learn to play in the street with and in the parks with Teddy Weston and people like that, and you don't lose that. That's with you forever, wherever you go. Whether it's Chelsea, Stoke, Arsenal, Seattle, that your grounding was, mine was in the Upson Road where we had the cage and the Hillbrook and with my dad and all that. And Teddy, he played with Teddy West. You're watching the Chelsea old boys and you see the way they play and little things. So you pick up things from them. You know, Teddy was a good player. You know, and where you learn your football was like going to school, really, better than going to school. You know, you learn nothing at school. But
what was the name of that school over in Chelsea, Rob, Alan? Was it Ashburton School?
Ashburnham.
Burnham School. It had a massive playground, didn't it? Massive.
Yeah.
And that was like, we were fortunate. It was all concrete, of course, just to explain it to Tony. But you could play keepball there, couldn't you? Like keepball, and then that had a huge playground, didn't it? Like that was probably my biggest pitch that I played on.
I used to play in your place, Tashbrook Estate.
Yeah, in the yard, in the
that was a great five-a-side pitch down.
That's it. They had a little ledge round it where everybody could sit and watch you, didn't they?
Yeah.
And everybody from the flats used to watch, all from the flats, all the mums and dads, didn't they?
Can you remember a kid over there called Blackie?
Tommy Blackman?
Would that be him? He was fancied himself a bit. He was a kid over there when we played.
Yeah. There was some good players that never made it, really, wasn't there? And you had to wonder why sometimes. Like we've all grown up with people, and you think he's a certainty, got to be a bang on certainty. But sometimes their private lives, they didn't have someone to take them here, there, and everywhere. We were fortunate, like we had people like Teddy and my dad, Tommy Mason, all in the taxis.
Tony, remember Marky Lovell from White City?
Marky Lovell out of White City.
He should have gone on, and he was best mates with Wally, wasn't he? He should have gone on and had a career. He made his debut at a young age, like you, 17, 18 at Fulham when Bobby was manager. But just never had the sort of backing from his family or the following, or just drifted out the game fairly early, didn't he?
Yeah, and there was some you think, how did he make it? Didn't you?
Absolutely.
They were all millionaires.
Well, listen, guys, it's been an absolute treat listening to you and listening to you sort of recall your days as footballers and the stories behind your careers. But the great thing I've picked up from today is to see the enduring friendship that exists between you, Willow, and you, Gailey. I mean, you clearly had a bond in that team that has lasted all this time.
Yeah, we have. Unfortunately, we're very good friends, and also and the respect that we have for someone like Alan, and the respect that we've had for older great players like Alan, and just thanks for inviting us on, boys. Thank you, thank you both. I've really enjoyed it.
It's a privilege, Alan and Tony, to invite us on, or invite me personally on. But Tony, been an absolute brainstormer, talking about all these days. And like you say, next time you get 5 minutes, I'll log on to watch that big match revisit, and you'll see some of the Chelsea games that you played in, or some of your colleagues, and you'll probably see us pop up now and again, scoring a few, and Gailey scoring a few as well. But it's been an absolute privilege, and wish you well in the remainder of the year in your podcast.
Yeah, and when you've got another 4 hours, give us a ring.